we need to understand the function architecture. Function architecture, actually, when we write a function, so here we are defining, so a function, we have a function and function name, some print, and this function is defined like this. Actually, in this, we generally call this part as, that is called as function declaration. This is called as declaration. And this part, print, it may have some parameters also. We call this part as signature. Function signature. And this part, what the function can do, we call this as definition. So every function comprises of three parts: function declaration, function signature, and function definition. So declaration contains the keyword function. Signature means what is the name of the function, and definition means what functionality it have to perform. That is what actually definition. So every function contains three things. So we have function, so print like this. So here every function comprises of three parts. Number one is declaration. Declaration is function print, that is declaration. Second one is signature. Signature is print. So function is print. Okay, signature is print. And definition is the block, what it have to perform, that is the block. So every function contains these three parts: declaration, signature, and definition. And you can access any function by using its signature. That means wherever you want to use that function, then we have to use its signature. Signature is print. To access any function, we have to use signature. We have to just use print. So that is the basic about function. So we have declaration, we have signature, and we have definition. So in order to access a function from any location, we have to use this print. Function is declared by using the keyword function, right? So in various occasions, sometimes we don't have a name for function. Sometimes we don't have a definition for function. Those situations you will see. That is the reason you should know what is the meaning of declaration, signature, and definition. That is important. So basically, function can allow to reuse. Already we learned that. So let's open our project, and we want to reuse. Then we can simply configure like this. So we have a for where I, or simply where I is equal to 1, I less than or equal to 10, I plus plus, document dot write the value of I. Now I want to use this again and again. Then we can create a function for this as print numbers. And in that, we can define those statements. Now, if I want to access the function, we have to call the function by signature. Its signature is print numbers. That means it is going to execute and display those details. So that is a general technique about function, right? That is one point. Next important, that means we can reuse anything, we can reuse. Next important, you should know function parameters. Actually, function can be parameterized, parameterless, or parameterized. Function can be parameterless or parameterized, without parameters or with parameters. Why we need a parameter? Currently, the function print numbers is not having parameter. That means this is a parameterless function. Example is this. So example, parameterless function. Parameterless function is this. That means print numbers is not having parameters. Now the question is, why we need parameters? What is the necessity of parameters? Actually, parameters are used to modify the function. Parameters are used to modify the function. Generally, parameters are not there. Then what will happen? See now, it is printing numbers 1 to 10. I will call this one more time, print numbers. Then it will print 1 to 10 again. How many times you call, it will do the same work every time. But I want this print numbers in such a way that it will print only what range of numbers you want. In that case, you cannot write, suppose to print 10 numbers, one function, to print 30 numbers, another function, to print 5 numbers, another function. You can't do that. Only one function must able to modify itself. Only one function must able to work for different situation. We should able to modify the function. That you can do by using parameters. Parameters are used to modify function, so that you can use a function for different situations. Without parameters, it will do the same work. Every time it will do the same work. But parameters can modify. How? Let's see. Actually, parameters. Now, how to define parameters? I will give these diagrams in the class. I will upload. I will save this as function 1. Okay. Now, another important here is C. I will take a new one. Yeah. Now, here, when we are defining function here, we have function, some print. Print, so is a function. Now it is having a parameter. Function is having a parameter. Now, already we know what is definition, what is signature and all. Now, the parameter that you defined while declaring, in the declaration, you have a parameter. That parameter is called as, we call that parameter as formal parameter. It is called formal parameter. The parameters that are defined in the function declaration, they are called formal parameters. Now, when you are trying to access the function, print is the function we are accessing. Now, you have to pass the value into that parameter value. We have to pass the value into it. Now, the value that you are passing into this parameter, we call this as actual parameter. Actual parameter. So what are formal parameters? What are actual parameters? Formal parameters are the parameters defined in function signature declaration. They are defined in function declaration. While calling the function, whatever you pass for those parameters, these are called actual. We have formal parameter, actual parameter. So important, formal parameter, it is the formal parameter is nothing but it is reference name. Formal parameter is a reference name. Reference name. That means it is memory name. Reference name means like variable name. It's a memory name. Actual parameter is nothing but actual parameter is, so it is nothing but it is let me keep this. Yeah. So actually it is the value stored in reference. It is the value stored in reference. That means what value to store in that reference. That is what actually we call as formal. This is actual value. It is stored in that parameter. So that means in the declaration, whatever parameters you give, they are formal. And whatever values you pass into them, they are actual. Now, important is, I will copy this one also, right? So function 2, okay. Now, important is every parameter that you defined in the formal list is mandatory. It is compulsory. Every parameter you defined is mandatory. How many parameters are there currently? How many parameters are there? 1. That means how many values I need to pass? 1 value I have to pass. So here, based on, this is very important, you should know a point. Actually, based on how many parameters, how many values, based on how many values need to be passed into a function. So based on how many values need to be passed into a function, so we configure, we define them, we define function better. We define function as with arguments. We call arguments. Based on how many values need to be passed into a function, we define function as with arguments. That means now tell me how many arguments are required for a function currently? 1 argument. That means a parameter is expecting value and you are not passing that value. Then it will give a message, arguments not matching. What is meant by argument? Argument indicates how many parameters a function can access. That means how many parameters are defined in a function. These are called arguments. If there is 1 parameter, How many arguments? 1. If there are 4 parameters, 4 arguments. That means depending on how many number of parameters we have to pass into a function, we refer it as arguments. But actually function contains arguments or parameters. Function contains parameters. Then why sometimes people call arguments? Their intention is to tell that it will take those number of parameters. That means it will say argument missing. Argument missing means parameter missing, right? While designing, we use the word parameter. While using, we use the word argument, right? So designing, we use parameters. While using, we use arguments, right? So better you always use the word formal parameter, actual parameter. So for example, what is the purpose of parameter? As I told you, parameters are used to modify function. And parameters are classified into 2 types. We have formal parameters and we have actual parameters. What is difference? Formal parameters are defined in function definition, function declaration. In function declaration, that means function print. So you have a, that is formal. So a is formal parameter. Now actual parameters are defined in function calling, That means whenever I call print into that, I will pass 10. That means here 10 is actual parameter. 10 is actual parameter. So a is equal to 10. That's what actually happens. That means a is reference and 10 is value stored in that reference. That is the point. So, and very important is how based on how many parameters are required. Based on how many parameters are required, function is defined as with arguments. Understood? Defined as with arguments. And very important, every parameter in function is required. That means required means what? Mandatory. You cannot ignore. And another point, order of parameter is also mandatory. Order of parameter is also mandatory. That means you mentioned a, the first value should be related to a. So you cannot ignore any parameter. You cannot pass any wrong value into different parameters. I will show that. So why I am saying that parameters can modify the function? You see, currently this print numbers is printing same 10 numbers, but this time I will use a parameter. Here I will say, so print numbers, how many numbers? Just I given a variable name, and I less than or equal to, it will use that how many. That means whenever you call print numbers, you have to tell how many numbers. Then that how many numbers, if I say 5, that 5 will apply here. I less than or equal to 5. If I say 10, I less than or equal to 10. Now see, I am calling that two times. I am calling that two times, but not passing the parameter. Then see what will happen. Let's go inspect in the console here. You see, I am refreshing. There is no problem, but not work. Why? Because these parameters are not passed into it. How many arguments are required? You have to pass the number of I want to print 5 numbers. Then you can see it is going to print 5 numbers. So I am going to in the next I want to print suppose 8 numbers. That means again it will print 1 to 8 numbers. That means the same function is expecting to happen with the different types of functionality. Suppose I am passing here 8 comma 40 like this. I defined here. That means some other value. There is nothing, because these parameter values will be identified when you use a reference for them. I will show that. That is not a problem. It will never take that value. Arguments will not be taken, right? Now, how many arguments are allowed? How many arguments are allowed in this current function? One argument. So here, this is an example. This is an example for one argument. Very important. You should know that function can have multiple parameters. Multiple parameters. As I told you, all parameters are required and order dependent. All parameters are required and order dependent. That means now see here, this time I am creating another function. Now I am creating a function. Details is a function. Now into the details function, I am passing different parameters. And very important, function can have multiple parameters, and another function can handle any type of parameter. Any type of parameter means it can be primitive type, or it can be non-primitive type, or it can be even a function. A function can have any type of parameter. For example, here I give an ID, name, price, stock. Like this I defined. Now we have 4 parameters. Now I am printing those 4. So document.write, I am printing the 4. Here I am using backtick for embed expression. I will say ID is equal to dollar, whatever ID is there, parameter. In the next line, name, whatever name is defined. In the next line, price, and whatever price is defined in the parameter. And here we have stock, and whatever stock is defined. Like this we are using. That means now see here, I am passing a function. I am calling the function details. And into the details, I am not passing anything. I am not passing anything into details. All are undefined. Because if value is not supplied, you know that by default they are set as undefined. All are undefined. And see here, suppose I don't have ID. I am writing first ID, after that name, after that price, after that stock. I am defining like this. And you can see it will take all those details. But I don't have name. If I don't have name, you cannot remove this. You cannot remove this. If you remove, then what will happen is actually this will be stored in ID. This will be stored in name. Because JavaScript is not strongly typed, it will take any type of value. In a memory, you can store any type of value. And as per order, what happens? Second value belongs to name. Third value belongs to price. Fourth value is undefined. Fourth value is undefined. That means you save this. You see, it shows like that. So then what we do, if name is not there, later we will supply name, then you have to keep the place of name empty. Understood? You have to keep the place empty. You cannot put there something else. Right? So that means every parameter is required and in the same order required. If you don't want to pass, then keep it empty. If it is a number, keep it 0. Name is empty. Actually, we do one more thing. So means that is a lengthy logic. So for example, see, this is one example. There is a lengthy logic actually. Actually, what we do is, suppose I am expecting name and price. Only 2 details I am expecting. And if name is not mentioned, I will clean up this. If name is not mentioned, print only price. If price is not mentioned, print only name. Otherwise, print all. Then how to write logic? So we have to write a lengthy logic like if name is equal to undefined. Undefined is a type. Then document dot write, we have to print price is equal to whatever price is. Else if, that means we are writing here else if price is equal to undefined. If price is equal to undefined, document dot write, we have to print name. Name is equal to plus name. Else, that means we have to print both name and price. Document dot write, and we have to define both name and price. That means name is equal to, I will just give a back tick. So name is equal to dollar name. And in the next line, price is equal to dollar price. So dollar price, this is how we are defining. So name and price, like this we are configuring. Now, whenever I call the function details, observe here, how do we do? It's compulsory to pass something there. Then in the first place, what we do, we leave it empty. And after that, I am writing price. That is wrong. Because as per the standards, you have to mention the parameter. You can't ignore. Then what we do, we will simply pass as undefined. We use undefined. That means now name is not defined. If name is not defined, then it has to print only price. That means we should not print and show empty. We should never print it. Right? So if price is undefined, right? If price is undefined, and name is defined, some TV, then it should print only name. That should print only name. Right? If name and price both are defined, that means name and price both are defined. We are configuring both the name and price, then it will print both. You can write one more logic. If both are undefined, then say that please provide some details. You can use a switch case, you can use a condition. It depends on how you write the logic. There is no other alternative. You have to write like this only. That is the reason it is very risky in modern programming. That is the reason JavaScript is not good for modern developers. So we are using now language called TypeScript. But anyhow, TypeScript also should convert everything into JavaScript, but we don't directly write JavaScript. Remember, I already told you, you are learning JavaScript in real-time projects. Anywhere you will not use direct JavaScript. Anywhere you will use jQuery or Angular or React or Vue, Backbone, some advanced frameworks are there. But all they need JavaScript, right? But you will never directly use these examples as you learned in real-time projects. So you have to use jQuery, Angular, React, but there again language is JavaScript. So you in interviews they will test you on JavaScript, but in real time you have to work on jQuery, right? So to crack interview, JavaScript compulsory, because in interviews very less they ask jQuery, but in real time everything jQuery. You see any website, majority jQuery. Now they are changing from jQuery to Angular and React, right? So the point is, this is very lengthy. We know that it is lengthy, but in real world we don't use this. But we know that in the background, this is the technique, how we have to write. So we can configure in this way. This is another example, how to define. Now, as I told you, you can have any type of parameter. Any type of parameter. That means, for example, I want to create a function, print array. You can give any name. If I pass an array into it, it should be able to print the elements in that array. That means I want a function to read all the elements from array. Then what to do? What is the parameter now? How to write parameter? How to write the parameter? You see the definition I told you. So you should know that, yeah. So based on how many arguments, huh? So parameterless parameters, formal and actual parameters. You see, I told you that A is a reference, na? A is a reference. That means how you create a variable to store array. How to create a variable to store array? That means you have var. If I want to store an array, no change. We use just name only, na? Am I right? If you want to store multiple values into it, we pass that through this. Is it array declaration? It is not array declaration. It is array initialization. Array initialization. Declaration is this only. That means for a object also same declaration. For a array also same declaration. For a regular expression also same declaration. For date also same declaration. For map also same. Then how it says that it is array or map or date? Based on what you initialize. Am I right? Based on what you initialize. So what is declaration? Declaration is normal. That means if I want to store an array in a function parameter, then how to declare? Nothing. Just you put a list. You don't need to write square brace and like that. Right? That means now in this, you can store anything. It can be array, it can be object, it can be regular expression that you decide while sending. That means what we do, we will write logic for printing the list. How we do that? We will simply write a for var item of what? List. Then document dot write, we will print that item. That's it. Right now, whenever we call that print array, now it is expecting a list array. Then you know how to pass an array. Array is passed with a square brace. That is array. That is how we pass array. Array of string, array of number, or array of various types of values. That means here I define some electronics. I define some footwear. I define some fashion like this. I am defining this is array. That means it is going to print all those elements. So we created a function which can print. You see, there are so many points. You can do like this, or what you can do, I will create an variable called, suppose some variable called products. In that variable, we will store TV, we will store mobile, we will store watch, like things. Now I want to print this. If I want to print this, what we have to do? Print array. Into that, we just pass the products. Am I right? We'll just pass the products. Directly, you can pass array elements, or you can create one array and you can pass into it. Both are same. I will print here document dot write. I will print here HR, horizontal line. I'm printing a horizontal line, and you can see it is printing those details. That means you can directly define like this, or you can create an array, you can pass, or there are so many techniques now. What you can do, you can also put here, suppose document dot write, again HR, horizontal line. Below, I will use print array. In that, you can pass new array like this also. You can pass like this also. Into that, I passed some names like John, David, something like this. And you can see it is using that also. That means there are various techniques of passing the data, but formal parameter is always a reference name. Formal parameter is always a reference name. In that, you can store anything you want. You can store array, you can store object. That means formal parameter will not change according to data type. For any data type, formal parameter is same. Right? Passing value into it will change. Right? So this is we have an array. That means example. This is an example for array parameter. Now, if anybody asks, can you have multiple arrays parameters? You can have. Along with array, you can have another parameter also. Right? You can use anything. That means, for example, here I am using this list. And after that, I am using so title. That means now print array is expecting list. We are printing the list. Before printing the list, we will use document dot write. We will print in a heading style. We will print the title. Understood? In a heading style, we will print the title. Under that, list will print. That means whenever you pass list, after passing the list, you have to put a comma. You have to pass title. Title is a string. This is what category is. This is what. So after this, products, another title. What is it? Products. And after that, here we will pass comma. What is it? Users. Then you can see for all of them, we have title also. We have categories, we have products, we have users. You can have multiple parameters. Along with array, you can have another array, or you can have a string, or you can have a number, anything. But all are declared with just same reference. Into that, what you pass will be changing. This will be changing. That means this is example array with string. like this, how you can handle. You can have any kind of parameter. As I told you, you can even have a function. You can even have a function as parameter. That means, see, for example, generally, why we use functions as parameters? See, suppose I'm creating a function, validate is a function. This validate function is taking password. After taking password, it will have success and it will have failure. So if password is equal to some admin, whatever we are expecting, then success. Success, I want like a function. That means if I use a parenthesis, that means this is now behaving like a function. Else, what should happen? Else, what should happen? Failure. Failure, I want like a function. Then what we do here, whenever we call validate, in the validate, first we have to pass password. Password is admin. After that, success is expecting a function. We have to write a function. After that, comma, it is expecting another function. This is failure function. Now here, this function will print document.write. What it will print? Login success. What second function will print? Document.write. So invalid password. Like this we write. For clarity, you can write in number of lines. That means here, see what I am doing. This is admin. This is function, right? This function on what? Success. There is another function. This function is on what? Failure. Like this I am writing. Like this I am writing. Actually, you can write in one line. So this is the combination how you define. That means now you see it is going to display that login success. If the password is wrong, something else you entered, then it will put another one. This is invalid. This mechanism is called callback. You saw we used a promise technique, fetch. That means on successful, it is executing then. On failure, it is executing catch. Catch is used on failure. Right? That means we have two functions, but both will not work. Depending on situation, which one will work, it will decide. That means if anybody asks why we need a function parameter, means why we need a function as parameter. We need a function as parameter for handling callback. This mechanism is called callback. Callback means you have a set of functions, but all functions will not execute. Depending on the situation, which function have to execute, it will do. The functions execute according to the situation. According to situation, that is what actually callback. So generally, the functions are used with this callback. This is another example. So function with function parameters, function type parameters. So used for callback, used for callback. This is example. That means how do we define function with the parameter? Now here, very important is, very important note is using lot of parameters in a function is not safe for application. That is very important. Parameters usage is very dangerous because if you are allowing parameters, so actually it leads to injection attacks. It leads to injection attacks. In computer software applications, you have to face injection attacks. Injection attacks means actually the person who is using your application, he will not send simply some value. He will send some suspicious value which can hack your application. These are injection attacks. That means, for example, see, means one simple point I will tell you, later you will understand. Actually, we have a text box. In this text box, I asked ID. That means enter ID and submit. So I have a text box. In the text box, he need to enter ID. And after entering ID, he need to submit. Generally, what we do is in the background for this functionality, suppose actually we write logic like this. We write logic, select star from table where ID is equal to matching with whatever ID they pass. That means whatever ID they passed from the text box, collect and use it. Now what happens is, this is the query written in the background behind. User don't know that, but hacker knows it. Hacker knows that. Then if any case hackers opens your website source code and he able to know the, means there are so many techniques for that, he able to know your database table, which table you are using, because you haven't concentrated on security things and you made your table visible to everybody. That means visible to everybody means somewhere in your website you mentioned some details like we are working with this table, right? He saw that. Then what he will do is, generally general users, what they do, they enter ID and they simply submit. But what hacker will do, he will put an ID. After that, he will write a command, delete star from table. And he will submit this. He will submit this. When he submits this, what happens is, this 2 is passed here. After that, what will happen is, this command is directly passed here. This command will execute and will delete all the data. Will delete all the data. That means whatever records are there in the table, they are cleaned up, deleted. This is too dangerous. These kind of attacks are called injection attacks, cross-site scripting attacks. For example, suppose I asked user to enter name. Okay. Now what happened is, when he entered name, he entered like this, B John. What does this means? Actually, he have to enter only John, but he entered B John. That means bold. And if it taken that and printed in bold, that's not good. That means he is trying to affect your application and you are allowing. You are allowing. That is what actually problem with inner HTML, I told you. Inner HTML allow formats, but it is dangerous. That means how anybody can modify your page appearance, right? Whether it should be bold or not, I will decide. He will not decide, but he decides. So he can do that. That means, for example, see, suppose I am having here, suppose name. So input type is equal to text. ID is equal to some name, user name. Okay. And we have a button submit. Now what happens here? So we put a paragraph. Okay. And here we are writing a script and we are defining a function. So submit, click, right? And here we are accessing document get query selector. what is it? Paragraph dot inner HTML document get element by ID, whatever username dot value. We are doing this, and on button on click is what? Submit click, submit click. Now here, so I am typing here. So I am typing B, suppose some name, and close B and submit. It's bold. How you can do that? How you can allow? That means you are allowing general people to write some program in the text box, and it is affecting. Then he can do lot of things on your application. This is dangerous. We call this as cross-site scripting attacks. Cross-site scripting attacks. Actually, here you see in the console, it is not showing any problem. But later in JavaScript based technologies, we can recognize this and report this, saying that some cross-site attack is happening. Some suspicious data is being posted. We can track that. That is what security is. For that, ready-made functions are there, or we have to write a manual function for that. So allowing parameters is always dangerous, because it will allow these type of attacks are called injection attacks. We call this cross-site scripting or injection attacks. That is the reason don't use a lot of parameters. And one more point is that actually as per ECMA standard, so function allows only 1024 parameters, 1024. That means how many parameters we can pass in a function. As per ECMA standards, 1024. That means 1024 parameters you can pass. But this is very risky. Already I told you, allowing multiple parameters is always dangerous. That is the reason what happened is JavaScript ES so 6 and higher version introduced the concept called REST parameters. REST parameters. What is REST parameter? A single REST parameter allows multiple arguments. That means one parameter allows multiple arguments. Actually, for every argument, you need a parameter. But one REST parameter can allow multiple. For example, the previous example, what I showed you, this is failure and all, right? Let me copy this again. This is password related. I will remove this again. Now see here, what we are doing is here, instead of passing multiple, what we do is we can just define. So as validation details, or I will say user details. Okay, user details. But here user details means only one parameter, but it should accept three. One is password, another one success function, another one failure function. Then we can use ... Even it is 10 parameters, 3 dots only. Don't think that 1 dot for one parameter, 2 dot for two parameters. 3 dots is standard for REST. REST parameter means 3 dots, ... In that it can be 1 or 2 or more than 2, any. So here now what we do, we have to, this is nothing but collection of many values. Remember, this is an array now. Now in this array, at 0, first parameter, at 1, second parameter, at 2, third parameter. Now how to collect them? You can use user details of 0, user details of 1, or if you remembered, we learned destructuring, na? Array destructuring. What I will do, I will declare var. In that first one is password, second one is success, third one is failure. This comes from user details. This is better. Even you pass 100 parameters, one argument is enough, right? And you can collect all of them and store them in the local reference. Now this is also working fine. That means it says invalid password. I will enter the password correct as what? Admin. Then it will get that login success. This also working fine, but this time, so this is REST parameter. REST parameter means one parameter that allows multiple arguments, right? But here some rules are there. So one parameter that allows, that means REST is defined. REST is defined by using dot 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 and the parameter name, dot 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 and param name. That means we have to define syntactically function. So here name and dot 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 param name, parameter name. This is REST parameter. But here some rules are there. This is example. Same example with REST. But here some rules are there. Remember, every function can have only one REST parameter. Every function can have only one REST parameter. That means function I given name and a dot dot dot, so one dot 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 two, it cannot be like this. That means this is invalid. So every function can have only one REST parameter. Another important is REST parameter must be last in formal list. Must be last in formal list. That means suppose I given function name and we have dot dot dot. Here we have user details. After that we have title. This is invalid. This is invalid. Function, we have name, title can be first, dot 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 user details can be last. This is valid. You can have any number of other parameters also, but REST parameter must be last. REST parameter must be last. That means, for example, see here, I am writing another parameter called title here. And you see, I am printing also here. Printing is document.write in a heading. I will give backtick. In a heading, I will print the title. Whatever title is entered, we want to print that. After that, this. Now you see, it shows an error. It says that a REST parameter must be last in parameters list. So that is the rule of REST parameter. That means you have to put this title. So before this, that is okay. Understood? That is fine. That means now I have to pass the title first. Na? So before passing all these details, I have to pass the title first. After that, password and others. Title is, I will just keep as validate user, right? And here I am just using it. It will work. That means you can have other parameters along with REST parameter, but REST parameter must be last, right? This is very important rule about the parameters, right? This is basic how we can configure the parameters, right? Now, so many other options are there, function, recursions, arrow functions and all that we'll see next session. Tomorrow we will do that. Mostly by tomorrow we can finish all the function part. Then we will go with object oriented programming, right? Tomorrow we'll continue, right?